The most controversial moment in the history of I'm a Celebrity? Get me out of here. We've all been there. You're snuggled up on the sofa with your cup of tea, ready to indulge in some quality TV. But just as the show is about to start, an advert break interrupts your viewing pleasure. You reach for the remote, but it's too late. You're already 5 minutes into the latest episode of I'm a Celebrity before you know it, and you're not alone. According to AFCOM, over 10,000 complaints were made last year about ad breaks during live TV events, with the majority citing I'm a Celebrity as the offender. But what are these people so mad about? Well, it's all because of this. In November 2017, a group of celebrities had just finished recording the first episode of I'm a Celebrity. The camp was nestled deep within the Australian jungle, and they just completed a series of terrifying trials to earn their first meal of the series. Then, just as they were tucking into their well-earned dinner, a helicopter touched down, and two fresh faces appeared. They were NFL star Chad Johnson and radio presenter Jamie Theakston, who come to replace two of the original contestants, who had to leave due to injury. There was just one problem, though. No one had told the camp that replacements were coming in, or that the original contestants would be leaving. So the arrival of Johnson and Tickle caused chaos among the group. It turned out that bosses had recorded a fake helicopter arriving at the camp earlier on in the series, but the clips hadn't aired until now. What followed was a series of edited scenes designed to make it look like the arrivals had caught everyone by surprise. So far, so good. A little bit of reality TV trickery to keep things interesting. But then, something happened that no one could have predicted. One of the original contestants, comedian Ian Lee, decided that he couldn't be bothered to play along anymore. He simply stood up, walked over to the new arrivals and said, "So where are we going to get our food from now?" It broke the fourth wall, confused the new arrivals, and raised serious questions about what was really going on. What viewers didn't realize was that Lee was following a carefully constructed plan hatched between him and the producers earlier on in the series. He'd become increasingly unhappy with the show, feeling that his fellow contestants were being unfairly targeted by the editors, and that the public were getting a distorted view of what was really happening in the camp. In particular, he was furious that stories about his struggles with the eating trials were given prominence, while the more heartwarming stuff, like how he formed a close bond with another contestant, Lady Colin Campbell, was ignored. He tried raising his concerns with the producers, but nothing changed, so he decided to take matters into his own hands. He devised a plan with the show as producers in which he would feign annoyance at the new rivals in order to draw attention to what he saw as unfair editing. It seemed like a harmless stunt, but it backfired spectacularly. Viewers accused him of being a bad sport, the other contestants felt humiliated, and show bosses were left scrambling to fix the damage. Over the next few days, the show's editor compiled a list of Lee's worst offenses, including him calling the new arrivals jobsworths and refusing to participate in challenges. And then, just as planned, they started using them against him. For the next few episodes, Lee was shown arguing with the other contestants and generally being a pain in the backside. Then, just as he was at his most unpopular, his scenes were cut and he was sent home. Looking back, Lee realized that he'd made a terrible mistake. While his intentions had been good, the execution had been clumsy, and he ended up making himself look like an idiot. And then to rub salt into the wound, he was replaced by none other than Jamie Theakston, the very person he'd annoyed in the first place. But why did Lee feel so strongly about the way the show was being edited? Well, it's because I'm a Celebrity is notorious for its sneaky editing tactics. From planting fake clues about critters in the bushes to faking entire scenes, producers will do pretty much anything to make their show as entertaining as possible. But it wasn't always like this. Back in the early 2000s, the show was a lot more straightforward. Most of the editing was confined to cutting together voiceovers and removing the odd swear word. But as the years went by, the show's producers got bolder and bolder. In 2011, producer Ozzy Loostall revealed that the show's edit could change the outcome of a trial. To give an example, he described how one task required the celebrities to arrange 12 Chinese hieroglyphs in the correct order. Those who got it right would win a 5-star meal. But those who got it wrong would be forced to eat a bowl of witchetty grubs, a local delicacy here in Australia. Now, to get it wrong isn't necessarily a big deal. After all, everyone has to eat a few critters at some point. But if the edit paints the task as more difficult than it really is, then viewers at home might think that their favorite celebrity is a bit of a wimp. So as well as showing the celebrities struggling to solve the puzzle, the producers also put subtitles on screen to make it clear that the task was insanely difficult. But the truth was that it wasn't. Many of the celebrities knew exactly what they were doing, and they knew that if they played their cards right, they'd end up with a nice slap-up meal. But perhaps the most blatant example of editing occurred in 2013 when show bosses faked an entire scene involving Joey Essex and a snake. It all started when the producers realized that they needed a dramatic moment to spice up the series. So they came up with a simple solution: stick Joey Essex in a box with a snake. Easy. Except there was one small problem. Joey Essex was terrified of snakes. Show bosses had forgotten to check his reptile risk assessment form, so they had to scrap their plans. But instead of admitting defeat, they came up with an even more ingenious solution. They simply filmed Essex entering the box, then spliced the footage together with shots of another contestant, Ashley Roberts, calmly dealing with a snake. When the episode aired, it seemed to shock viewers as they watched Essex scream in terror before pulling a face of realization. It was the perfect dramatic moment. Only thing was, it never happened. Essex was never in any danger, nor did he ever pull a face of realization. The whole thing was a complete fabrication. Now, it's important to stress that this kind of thing doesn't happen often. And when it does, it's usually done for the sake of entertainment. For example, in 2016, show bosses edited together a clip that made it look like Kendra Scott had stolen food from someone else's private stash. In reality, she'd found the food on a communal table, but the edit made it look like she'd pilfered it from someone's private stash. Despite AFCOM receiving hundreds of complaints, they ruled that it was a lighthearted joke that didn't warrant an investigation. Still though, it is fair to say that the show's editing has gotten more and more heavy-handed in recent years, and many viewers feel that the producers are sacrificing the integrity of the show in favor of cheap thrills. Well, that's certainly true of the infamous row between Noel Edmonds and his campmate, Emily Atack, in 2018. At the time, Edmonds was the show's longest-serving contestant, having entered the jungle 3 times. So it was something of a shock when he was voted off in the 4th episode. Many viewers felt that he'd been portrayed unfairly, with several complaining to AFCOM about the way he'd been edited. In particular, they took issue with the scene in which Edmonds got frustrated at the lack of sugar in his tea. It was just a lighthearted moan, but the editors made it look like he was being deliberately difficult. Then they showed a flashback to an earlier scene in which he decomplained about the lack of sugar again. The only thing was that second clip wasn't from the same day. The flashback was actually from the day before, when he'd made a similar complaint after being stung by a bee. Viewers weren't stupid, and many of them realized that the scene had been manipulated. Some felt that it was just poor editing, while others thought it was a deliberate attempt to make Edmonds look bad. Ultimately, it didn't matter, so the damage was done, and he became the villain of the series. So why did the producers bother? Surely they could just show Edmonds moaning about the sugar without all the fancy editing tricks. Well, it's because modern TV shows rely heavily on keeping people watching. If you don't keep your audience engaged, then they'll switch to another channel or worse, start scrolling through their phones. And in the age of streaming services, there's literally thousands of shows competing for people's attention. So TV producers have to pull out all the stops to keep their audiences engaged. Part of that is through editing. By playing around with the footage, they can create moments of drama and excitement that never actually happened. And while that might seem a bit underhanded, it's perfectly legal. After all, the footage was shot with the understanding that it could be manipulated in the edit. In fact, it's usually written into the contracts that the footage can be used however the producers see fit. Still though, it leaves us with an important question. How much of I'm a Celebrity is real? Well, the answer is complicated. Certainly not fake news, but it is heavily edited. The show wouldn't be nearly as entertaining if everything we saw was genuine. So the producers are under pressure to manufacture drama wherever they can. That means that while the challenges are real, and the critters are real, and the emotions are real, the order in which they appear might not be. The best way to watch I'm a Celebrity, therefore, is to keep in mind that what you're seeing is only half the story. Who knows? You might even find yourself feeling a bit sorry for Noel Edmonds. Thanks for watching. Like and subscribe to be notified about our latest videos.